Welcome everybody. What we've got today is a video by Oscar Hikes, and I have to say this video is really taken off. I found this uh about a month ago when it first came out. Yeah, it's been out a month, and I've been meaning to do a reaction video to it, and it's taken me unfortunately this long. So in that time it's got 282,000 views, so well done to Oscar for smashing the algorithm on this one. He's got 10 tent mistakes every new backpacker makes.
I can pretty much guarantee that you're making at least 5 out of these 10 common tent camping mistakes. Most of us place our backpacks over here, over to one side of the vestibule. But this is bad because it blocks a big part of the gap underneath the vestibule. Doing this reduces the airflow coming through the tent, which in turn greatly increases the condensation buildup in the morning. So instead, put your backpack over here in the center of the vestibule or put it inside the tent, making sure that no gaps are blocked.
Okay, so straight away, I just want to make a comment about that, because most of my shelters, as you will know, are very open shelters, and I kind of get where he's going. But the thing with that is you have a small pack and you have a big shelter with a huge amount of open sides. So I don't realistically think that, one pack is going to block, a huge amount of air coming in. And to be fair, if you have a draft and you've got an open shelter, then it's kind of like a good idea to put the pack where the draft is, just to give you some protection, because you've got plenty of open areas for plenty of air to get in. So I wouldn't realistically worry too much about putting a pack next to a gap like that. I think it's actually a good idea to do that, because then it can stop some drafts coming in, unless it's very warm and obviously you want more air, then I think it's fine. But to be fair, I think generally I would put the pack to block air, because you're going to get plenty of air coming in somewhere else.
Building your tent in an open area sometimes actually is okay if the night isn't going to be too windy or too cold. But ideally, you should build your tent in a place like this, right next to some trees. This will increase the temperature inside the tent by several degrees and also reduce the condensation due to natural protection from wind, rain, and the morning mist. But before you do that, always check that there aren't any dead trees nearby or right above the tent. Unfortunately, deaths from trees falling on the tent are quite common, so always make sure to build it only under smaller and younger trees.
Okay, that's obviously, an interesting thing here in, he's not doing this in the UK, is he? I think this is Europe somewhere. But here in the UK, we don't have so many trees. So I would say, yeah, that's good advice. Can't really debate anything there. But obviously here, avoid high ground when the weather is, not so good. And also, get down in the valleys. But as we will see, he does mention about valleys, a bit later on. So caution there. But, I don't always necessarily go for the most exposed spot. So, yeah, good. That's fine. Just find somewhere that is relatively sheltered, if at all possible.
Do not dry your wet hiking shoes, gloves, socks, or your rain jacket inside the tent. This will cause some of the moisture to evaporate and increase the condensation in the tent, which in turn will make your other gear damp. Instead, put them all in a dry sack or a trash bag overnight to isolate all of the moisture. It's much more efficient to dry your gear during the day in direct sunlight while having a pause or while having a meal.
How often are we realistically, going to stop and dry the stuff that got wet? Because we're probably going to be wearing it. So I don't really quite get that idea. And if you've got enough, ventilation, as he clearly does there, and as in an open shelter, you're going to have plenty of ventilation, I mean, yeah, I would if I've got cord or some guy line or something like that, I'd hang my stuff up and try and make it a little bit drier, you know, by the morning, so it's easier and not quite so miserable to get on. And then if you are a late riser, as I am in the morning, and if perchance there's any sun or breeze, and it's, you know, maybe you can actually dry your stuff out a little bit, teeny weeny bit before you actually put it on. So I wouldn't be, you know, stuffing it into a wet, you know, into a dry bag like that, where it's just going to be wet and cold and yucky in the morning. I would be spreading it out somehow or other. I don't think you're going to get much condensation from, you know, from wet clothes in your tent. You know, I don't, any more than breathing and cooking and everything else. I would try to dry it. I would try to dry it as best as you can, which probably isn't that easy when you're out and about anyway. But yeah, I would be trying to dry it a teeny weeny bit.
For staying warm, the most important thing is to keep your upper body warm, because your heart and most of your arteries are located there. One thing that can help with this is putting your empty backpack underneath your sleeping mat. This will add some additional padding between you and the cold ground, which will make you warmer.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, but realistically, we're probably going to have an airbed or something like that. So the only time I probably would put a pack under my feet like that is if I had a short mat, short airbed, something like that, to save a bit of weight. Then I might very well put the pack just to keep my feet off the ground. So yeah, I kind of half agree with that.
Setting your tent up on a slight incline might be bearable, but during the night, your feet will slide into the bottom part of the tent. This will make the bottom part of your sleeping bag wet from condensation and make your feet feel colder. If there's no flat ground, try to set it up in a way where you're sliding against the mesh part of the tent, not the bottom part of it. Or you could also set it up like this and put your feet inside an empty backpack, which will keep your feet from getting cold and wet.
There's quite a few comments on his video about this tip, and this was really one of the things that kind of caught my attention when I saw this a month ago, and he has responded to this. So check his video, and he has pinned a comment about this. I'm not going to really answer what he's put in his comment. I'm just going to react to the video, and personally I think this is I wouldn't say a bad idea, but I don't think it's a very good idea, because most packs are not going to be breathable. Most packs are going to be too small, you know, to get a sleeping bag in. If it's very, very cold and you try and do that, chances are you're going to compress the down. So you're probably going to get, you know, even colder that way. I guess if it's an absolute emergency, you know, I guess if you have no choice, but you know, you'd probably be better off putting your waterproof jacket over the foot end of your sleeping bag to just try and keep it away from the edge. Another thing that you could do if you are sliding down towards the back is, if you've got some clothes or something that you can put maybe under your hips or under your knees or something like that, under the mat, just try to raise the mat up a little bit. That would help stop you sliding, you know, to the back of the tent. So I would probably, in that instance, bizarrely, be putting that rucksack under the mat to raise the mat up a little bit, and that might also help, you know, stop you sliding down. But I would be concerned about putting my feet into anything that's not breathable and could end up compressing, you know, the you know, the down or something like that.
When the sun sets, the cool air drops down to the ground because it's much more dense and heavier than warm air. In the mountains, this usually means that the valleys fill up first because they act like pockets where all of the cold air accumulates. To illustrate this point, I'll tell you about the Stetteralm sinkhole in Austria. It sits at 1200 meters of altitude. For comparison, on Mont Blanc, which sits at 4800 meters of altitude, the lowest ever recorded temperature is minus 43 degrees Celsius. And in this sinkhole, which is much lower in elevation and theoretically should also be much warmer, the lowest ever recorded temperature is a whopping minus 53 degrees Celsius. This happens because the cold air gets trapped within the sinkhole and it pretty much has nowhere else to escape. So if you can, always try to avoid setting up your tent in deep valleys because it will be colder there.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, you know, we covered earlier in this video. Obviously, just be a little bit careful where you're setting up, you know, clearly not in the bottom of a valley, but that's even when it's not, you know, freezing cold. You know, try to get off the valley bottom, you know, and just go up the valley a little bit. Yeah, so that's fine.
Your face usually gets pretty cold when sleeping in a tent in a winter, but breathing into your sleeping bag will just make you colder in the long run. You'll get a lot of moisture in the sleeping bag, which will worsen its insulation properties and make you colder. A good idea is to carry a buff in situations like these because it will isolate the moisture within the fabric and make your face feel warmer at the same time.
Yes, can't argue with that. Let's keep going.
If your feet are cold, don't put on another pair of socks. This will restrict their blood flow and make your feet feel even colder. Instead, switch to a fresh pair of dry socks that aren't too tight. If you only have tight-fitting socks, then you can try warming up your feet with your hands before putting them on. This will make your feet warm up much faster.
Yeah, I again can't really argue with that one too much. The main thing that I would say with that one is just make sure that you have a sleeping bag and clothing that matches the environment that you're going into. You know, if you're getting cold feet in the middle of the night after several hours and your sleeping bag is not up to task. The other thing that you could do, and this is certainly worth thinking about, is rather than just like socks, and I always wear a light pair of merino socks more for comfort in my sleeping bag, but would be, you know, like very lightweight down booties, like PhD make them and others. You know, they're like 100 grams or, you know, a few grams basically, and some feathers, and you could put your feet in that, and then that would help warm your, you know, and that would help warm your feet up as well. So I would probably be thinking about, you know, if you weren't sure and you were concerned about wet feet, and you were concerned about cold feet, I would suggest that you took some down booties just to help warm your tutties up.
If your water filter freezes, then the membranes inside of it could break from expanding and contracting, which could essentially ruin it. And your electronics always drain quicker, charge much slower, and could even start glitching when exposed to very cold temperatures. So to avoid this from happening, always place your water filter as well as all of your electronics inside the sleeping bag overnight so that they're nice and warm.
Yep, can't argue with that. Yes, clearly when it's very cold, put electrical things in your sleeping bag. Yeah, I've been doing that for a long time, so that's good advice. The one thing I would just add on there, I noticed that he put his water filter directly into his sleeping bag. Chances are there's going to be water in that water filter. I'm sure he wouldn't do it anyway like that. But, you know, obviously in that instance, just put your water filter inside a Ziploc bag or a baggie or something like that, that if water does dribble out, it's not dribbling out into your sleeping bag and getting you cold and wet. So just, you know, be cautious of that. Obviously, I very rarely, well, I haven't yet ever filtered my water in the last 10 years, but it depends where he's camping and such like. But yeah, always filter your water. I never do. Let's carry on.
When setting up your tent, always make sure that each corner or the guy line is set out at a 45-degree angle from each corner. This will make sure that the tent is sitting up nice and straight. Another benefit is that less force will be applied to each tent stake, which means that it's much less likely to come out in high winds. Honestly, when I was just starting out, I was...
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, obviously you can't always put your peg in exactly at that 45-degree angle. It kind of depends on whether there's rocks or stones or what the terrain is like or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of, yeah, that's fine. And I noticed that he's pitching his shelters, you know, quite a little bit higher than we would, you know, in the UK and our more exposed areas, which again brings me back to the thing of if you're pitching your tent quite so high, I don't quite understand why you're worrying too much about putting your pack, you know, next to a side. It doesn't really make sense, that one. But let's keep going. Let's let him finish.
Making all of these tent mistakes, and I'm probably still making other tent mistakes right now just because I don't know about them yet. So if you know other tent tips that might be useful to other people, please write them down in the video comments. Thanks for watching, and
so yeah, I mean, that's just an interesting, I can actually do this one as a short video for once, rather than a super long video. Check out his channel. I haven't really seen any of his other ones, so I don't know what they're like. But yeah, I saw this one a month ago and it was just something. There was 2 or 3 or 4 thoughts there that I had on some of the tips there that I just wanted to share. But he's done very, very well with this video. Brilliant. Well done, Oscar. You know, nice video. Well done on your channel and everything else. Just a few comments on a few things there. Take care, everybody. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, note all the usual stuff. Thanks very much.
I'll see you next time. Bye.